What is the risk of medium term? Like, hear all the positives. You're a very positive person. What is wrong with medium term?
If you don't have a lot of time on your hands, it definitely takes more time to get your tenants set up. You have 4 turnovers a year versus just having 1 long-term tenant. It's not guaranteed that you're gonna find someone right away, so there is a bigger vacancy there. You've invested in furniture, you don't know if that's gonna pay off. I always have a plan A, B, and C when I invest. If an MTR doesn't work out, it's already furnished. I make sure short-term rentals are good in that town, and I turn it into a short-term rental. Or I sell the furniture on Facebook Marketplace and just turn it back into a long-term rental. You can't time MTRs, you can't time anything, so it's a risk. Real estate investing is a risk.
Reason everybody came. Amelia, let's start just 2-minute history on where you started, where you were, and then your transition to where you're at now. Kind of beginning, middle, end.
Yeah. Okay, my name's Amelia McGee. I'm originally from Sheraton, Iowa, which is in southern Iowa. I don't know if anyone else here is from southern Iowa, but if you are, yeah, Darson is. I currently invest in Des Moines and southern Iowa in Sheraton. I started investing in October of 2020. I flipped a property and then I used proceeds from that to purchase a triplex and a quadplex in Sheraton for $78,000 and $135,000 respectively, which was a great way to get started. I did the BRRRR process and was able to roll that money into purchasing more and more properties. At this point, I have around 36 doors, which are a combination of single family and multifamily. And midterm rentals are my favorite strategy, which is why I'm here to talk about them today. But yeah, that's kind of a summary.
When you started your first investments,
yeah,
where did the cash come from? What triggered you to do those deals?
That's a good question. Originally wanted to get into real estate investing. It's because I always knew that I wasn't meant to work a 9-to-5 job my entire life. So I knew I was gonna work for myself. I just didn't know what I was gonna be doing. Originally, my journey started because I was super into personal finance. I wanted to pay off my debt really fast, so that way, like, my living expenses would only be $1,000 a month as a single person for groceries and rent and nothing else. So I was like, I can do that. So that's how it started. And somehow I stumbled across Bigger Pockets and real estate investing. And I was like, oh, this is like my ticket to financial freedom. So I can travel, I can do whatever I want, golf, play pickleball. So that's kind of how it started. I flipped a property. I was doing nights and weekends. I did DIY with my parents on that property and quickly realized flipping was not the way I was gonna become financially free. That's why I started buying rental properties. Flipping is a lot of work if you're doing it DIY on nights and weekends.
So you got the cash from the flip?
Got the cash from the flip / was just like good with money to begin with.
So you had some saved?
I had a little bit saved. That's a good point. I was only making like $50,000 at my job at the time. I didn't have golden handcuffs. I was like, I can easily replace $50,000 a year. I literally had $10,000 saved, and my parents had a line of credit on their 401k, which is, they did not borrow from their 401k, but the bank used it basically as like, okay, we see you have a 401k, we can pay it off if you default.
Like, going into that, what disadvantage did you see that you had to overcome?
It took me probably like 2.5 to 3 years to convince my parents to do a flip with me. For some reason, they thought it was gonna fail no matter what. So that was a huge disadvantage, was just coming up with the money, because I'm 31. When I first started wanting to get started investing in real estate, I was 25. I didn't have a lot of money. So the biggest hurdle was honestly finding someone that could trust me enough to invest with me, which ended up being my parents.
Let's transition to specific medium-term rental discussion. Just give us a one-on-one. What constitutes medium-term versus short-term versus long-term?
Medium-term, or mid-term, as I like to call it, is a 30-day furnished stay. They're typically 90 days, but 30 days is generally like the shortest amount of time. They're fully furnished, utilities are included. Long-term, I think we might all know what long-term is. It's generally a year-long lease, unfurnished. And then short-term is gonna be like Airbnb. Those are going to be much shorter stays.
Like, tell us about your first medium-term rental. Like, how did that come about and why?
My first midterm rental was in Des Moines at an 11-unit apartment that I own on the south side. It is on Cortland Drive, right off of Bell-ish, Southwest 7th and Bell, Indianola, in that area. There were 3 units vacant when we purchased it, and my thought process was, I know that midterm rentals are becoming the thing. This is close to all of the downtown hospitals, which a lot of midterm rental tenants are traveling nurses. So I knew I had a good location for it. And I thought the barrier to entry and the risk was really low by just converting one of the 11 units into a midterm rental. So we started with just 1 unit. To give you some numbers, long term it would probably rent for around $700 to $725. Midterm, I get around $1,200 to $1,300 for those small studio units. And these are not fancy units. Most travelers, travel nurses specifically, just need a place to eat and sleep. A lot of them are just coming from close places like Omaha, Minneapolis, etc. So they'll come in town for 3 days and work, and then they'll go home for 4 days. So they're not looking for a luxury place, but that's how I got started. I converted one, had it filled immediately, consistently kept it full, and then slowly converted the other 2 vacant units to MTRs. Now there's 6 of 11 units that are MTRs in that building.
6 of 11.
Yes.
Those numbers seem really good. Why would you stop? Tell me about that, like just economics of it.
5 of them are still long-term units. I have extremely long tenancy in those units. One man has been there for 19 years. One other has been there for 11 years. I don't plan on kicking them out until they're ready to leave, and when they're ready to leave, I'll convert those units. I'll tell you, our pity on that building is probably around $4,500 to $5,000 every month, including utilities. The long-term tenants cover or almost cover my pity. That's really stable, guaranteed income every month for me. And then MTR I can kind of play around with and charge more for. So.
Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Pity.
Yes.
I was like, are you having pity on these people? What's going on here?
All my expenses.
Kind of in the market dynamics, what could constitute or what could happen with medium-term rentals? Is there a way that they don't continue to do as well as they're doing?
There's a lot of speculation about that right now, actually, as COVID has kind of ended and travel nurse contracts aren't as abundant as they were. I have noticed a slight slowdown in the amount of requests that I'm getting, but nothing significant. I'm still staying full. I also want to say that midterm tenants are not just traveling nurses. In Des Moines, I also get quite a few construction workers. Des Moines is great because it's a growing city and there aren't enough contractors that live in Des Moines, so companies are bringing contractors in from outside of the area and they need a place to live. That's another big group that I target as well.
How long have medium-term rentals, was there a name before medium-term rentals? Like, has there been a history of, in any downturn, what that's looked like?
Corporate housing and travel nurse housing is also what I've heard it referred to. It's been around forever. I mean, midterm rentals are not a new concept. They've just been coined, a catchy name, and Bigger Pockets has started promoting them more, and people are posting about them on Instagram. They're kind of like the sexy thing to do right now. But they've always been around, and I think they'll continue to be around. One other tenant base is digital nomads, which has become more and more of a thing. Younger people are able to work remotely and they're able to travel to different places that they want to try out. One other big market is people that are moving. I have tenant requests from people who are looking to move to Des Moines and they don't know where they want to buy yet, so they're looking for a furnished place for a short-term 1 to 3 month contract.
How do you stay up to date on what's going on in the medium-term market? Because I just feel like there isn't that much content around medium term. It's short term, it's long term, it's commercial. Where's the data source for that?
Yeah, there isn't a huge data source. There is a little bit of risk, I think, when you're starting in the MTR space because there just aren't a lot of reports out there about it. I will say that Furnish Finder, that's where I list all my properties. They also have statistics on their website where you can find out the demand in certain areas, just articles online. But really, Furnish Finder is the leading source for midterm rental
What others are there?
Bigger Pockets is another one. YouTube, like people on YouTube that do that kind of stuff. But really, it's like, I don't know. There's not a lot of info out there.
That's my struggle. That's why I asked.
And then people all the time are like, well, how do you know if this is going to be successful? Where's the data for this? It's like with anything in real estate, it's not 100% guaranteed. You can't time it,
The way I kind of look at stuff like that is like, what's the worst that could happen?
That's exactly
right. The worst that could happen, you pay for furnishing and it doesn't rent in 2 months, right? Like what's the chances of that?
You turn it into a short-term rental.
Do you tie both of those together, and what strategy how does that work?
Yeah, I do have a short-term rental in Clear Lake, Iowa. It's about 2 hours north of here. It's very much so a summer town. I get a lot of bookings on Airbnb during the summer, and then during the winter, I switch it to a midterm rental, and I have it rented from October through March to a traveling nurse that works in Mason City, which is about 20 miles away from Clear Lake. So it's not even in the same exact town, but there's so much of a need for it that people are willing to travel 20 miles, 20 minutes, or however long to get to it. I do have friends who own midterm rentals who will put their listing gaps on Airbnb during tenant vacancies so that they're also making money even when they're having, a week or two between tenants. So it's totally possible to do that as well.
Downside?
A downside to
doing that, it sounds like you have other people that do it, you don't do it.
I don't do it because I value my time more than a couple $100s, but if you're scrappy and you're looking to really capitalize on making as much money as you can, definitely do that. I'm a lazy investor. I like making my mailbox money and then I go from there.
Is there a bad location for medium-term rentals? Like if there was a bad property for a medium term, what would that look like?
There absolutely are bad properties for midterm rentals. A couple come to mind. Again, traveling nurses are your main clientele here. A lot of them are women. Any unsafe locations, I would say a C- or D class neighborhood is probably off the list. These are places where you're not going to want to walk alone at night. You're not going to feel safe. Loud locations is another one. Even if it's safe, if it's next to the train tracks or it's in a really loud place, that's probably not the best location. A lot of these travelers sleep during the day, so it needs to be quiet during the day. And then I do know people that buy larger properties and either rent by the room or rent the whole place out. However, I will say that I think there is more of a limited market for larger properties on midterm rentals.
Like an apartment complex?
No, like a 5-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house. You can definitely do it, but it's more like where a lot of travelers do want their own space. I would say smaller, like 1, 2, 3-bedroom max places are gonna work the best for midterm rentals.
So in my head, I hear 1 bedroom and 1 bath per person staying there.
That's typically what I have found to be the best. Just because I do it one way though, doesn't mean that you can't be successful doing it your own way. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. Most travelers are going to want their own bathroom. If they don't have their own bathroom, just realize your price is gonna have to reflect that. I mean, there's a price and an amenity for everyone. So some people could be willing to pay for a shared bathroom.
What's the range in pricing?
I can talk specifically about Des Moines because I'm in Des Moines. So my studios, like I said, rent from $1,200 to $1,300. Sometimes I'll take them down to $1,100 if I really want to get someone in there fast. A 1-bedroom that I own rents for $1,550. Again, these are not luxury units either. And then Chris just said he has a 3-bedroom that rents for $1,950 and $1,995. $1,995. Long-term rent, he said, would be $1,050. He's making $900 more per month on that unit. And furnishings for these units, a studio I can probably furnish for around $2,500 to $3,000. If I'm making $700 more per month, it's only going to take me 4 or 5 months to make my return on investment back on the furnishings.
Managing the properties. Do you manage them all yourself? Are there property managers out there that will manage short term? Do they take leases? What's the contractual obligation for that?
I do currently self-manage my entire portfolio. There are people out there that will manage midterm rentals. It's not that much different than a long-term rental, if I'm being completely honest. The main difference is it's going to generally be a 3-month lease. So yes, you do sign leases with these people. Yes, you do take a deposit. There's just going to be a higher turnover rate. But other than that, once the tenant's in, they really don't ever contact you again, similar to long-term, unless there's an issue that you need to address.
What about vacancy rate? How far in advance do these folks usually book the units?
It's typically your bookings are going to come in 1 to 3 weeks ahead of time, which can make you really nervous when you get to the end. I'm always like, oh, I have a vacancy coming up, like what am I gonna do? But the bookings always roll through. Nurses typically only get their contracts 1 to 3 weeks ahead of time. So that's just the name of the game. I do calculate 8% vacancy into my numbers for all my units, and that works out to be 28 days a year or 7 days between each turnover, because 3 months at a time there's going to be 4 turns a year, 7 days between each, and that generally is plenty of cushion for me.
You said the tenants don't usually reach out to you. Do you have repeat tenants? What do you do to
One, a really common thing is for nurses to have their contracts extended, which means they'll stay for an additional 3 months. We love that, right? They're there for 3 months, then they extend, they're there for 3 more, so total they're there for 6 months. It's amazing. I do have repeat tenants that will leave Des Moines for a while because of the law, like the regulations and tax things around travel nurse pay, and then they'll come back to the area and stay again. Remember, again, I said these people are like coming from within 2 to 3 hours. I had a nurse that contracted in Clear Lake. She stayed at my place. She is currently contracting in Des Moines now, and she's staying at my Des Moines place. If you can provide good customer service and a good place, they'll come back to you.
Did she just ask you if you had units in Des Moines?
Yeah, I told her that, hey, I have Des Moines units.
Yeah. Furnishing medium term versus furnishing short term. What's the difference? Is there differences? When I hear furnishing, I just hear expensive.
Cute, comfy, and cozy. The 3 C's is what I go for with midterm rental, not luxury. One thing I will say about midterm rentals, a lot of tenants are traveling with pets. So when you're furnishing these units, you have to think about being pet friendly and what will you change because of that. If you're doing a renovation, maybe nix the carpet and just go with LVP. Get couches that have covers that can be removed, things like that. So you're trying to pet proof the property. However, these spaces do not have to be luxury. I get most of my furniture from Amazon, IKEA, Walmart, and Target. I would love to get it from Westown, but it's just not in the budget. I definitely set a budget, like I said, $2,500 to $3,000 for a studio unit, and I really try hard to stay within that. Biggest expenses, couch and your bed. So if you can find really good deals on Facebook Marketplace, that's another way to cut costs as well.
So pictures on the wall, irrelevant. 3,000 seems really low.
I actually started off with the bare bones. I did not have pictures on the walls. I did not have the little, I don't know what it's called, foo-foo on the tables. I was balling on a budget. I needed to make money and I was just test running. I've started to add some artwork on the walls, but I would say it really hasn't affected my bookings at all. That's definitely more of a short-term rental Airbnb type of thing. Yeah. Don't make your unit look like a jail cell. At the same time, you don't need to go over the top.
Yeah, we've noticed in the short-term world, like you have to dress them up and there's specific things you need to do. It sounds stupid. I don't put pictures on the wall. I don't paint my house, but
I don't have any pictures on the wall.
Very impactful for short term. That's why I want to bring up a medium term. Pretty sure it didn't matter nearly as much.
No.
I think that's a big factor to think about as you're trying to decide if you're going to medium term, short term, all that. You kind of explained the ROI. You have 36 units. Why is not everything a medium term unit? Or like, what's that return difference?
20 units are in Sheraton, Iowa. 5,000 people. Hy-Vee warehouse is there. That's where most of my tenants are. Not a huge market for midterm rentals there. However, there is a small market for them because there's a nursing home there that cannot keep staff because it's such a small town. So they bring in traveling CNAs and traveling nurses to fill those needs. So if you're investing in a small town, call the nursing home, call the hospital, ask if they're employing travelers. They'll tell you yes or no, and then you can kind of have like, you can be the only MTR in town and really have control over that market. One, I'm in a small town, and then 2, I have long-term tenants in those units that I'm not going to kick out just because I just don't need to at this time, but I plan to turn them as they move organically. The ROI is amazing. I almost make double with MTR. I know I already said that, but you asked about ROI, so I just wanted to include that.
Yeah. What is the risk of medium term? Like, here are all the positives. You're a very positive person.
I know.
What is wrong with medium term?
If you don't have a lot of time on your hands, it definitely takes more time to get your tenants set up. You have 4 turnovers a year versus just having 1 long-term tenant. It's not guaranteed that you're gonna find someone right away, so there is a bigger vacancy there. You've invested in furniture, you don't know if that's gonna pay off. I always have a plan A, B, and C when I invest. If an MTR doesn't work out, it's already furnished. I make sure short-term rentals are good in that town, and I turn it into a short-term rental. or I'd sell the furniture on Facebook Marketplace and just turn it back into a long-term rental. You can't time MTRs, you can't time anything, so it's a risk. Real estate investing is a risk.
I think that answers most of the bullets that I had written down. What question, is there anything I should have asked you? Do you think on that? Q&A, anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
What do you do for managing your Clear Lake location? Like, are you driving up there and cleaning it?
Question is, what is she doing for her managing her Clear Lake property?
Yeah, that's my favorite property ever. I self-manage that. I have a cleaner in the area that does all of our turnovers and cleaning, so no, I'm not driving up there to do that. I self-manage everything through Airbnb and a platform called Hospitable, which is automated messaging to the tenants. Some guests I literally never speak to. They come, they are great, and they leave. And my cleaner gets automatically notified via Hospitable that there's a cleaning. She goes and cleans. It sends her, all of that info. And then I also use the system called Price Labs that sets up my pricing for that property. And that's it. It's really hands-off. Managing a short-term rental doesn't have to be like this crazy, scary thing.
Do you use all the Hospitable and Price Labs for everything, or just for the Clear Lake?
She asked if I use Price Labs and Hospitable for everything or just for my Clear Lake short-term rental. I use Hospitable also for midterm rentals for automated messaging, but I don't use Price Labs for midterm or long-term. It's only meant for short-term rental. That's the other thing, is there's no pricing softwares out there for midterm rentals.
I know.
So you have to do manual research via Furnish Finder and Airbnb monthly stays.
And come to these and ask people who are doing medium-term rentals and ask them what they're getting.
Yeah, I'm like, I could share $1,200 for a studio, $1,500 to $1,800 for a 2-bedroom, and $1,800 to $2,200 for a 3-bedroom. So if you have a property in Des Moines that fits one of those criteria, that's kind of what you're looking at. Rent by the room is a little bit different. I would say that's between like $700 to $900 if it's a private room in a shared house.
Definitely ask some people that are doing medium-term rentals, because that's one of my biggest pet peeves of medium. Go ahead.
Another thing you have to think about with MTR when you're running your numbers is utilities are included. I get that question all the time. Do you have the tenant set up the utilities in their own name every 3 months? No, that's way too much legwork. Tenants are not used to doing that. You have to bake that into your numbers. Wi-Fi is also included, so you need to make sure you're including that. And then a lot of times snow removal and lawn is also included. Don't sell yourself short when you're running the numbers. You want to make sure you're accounting for all those costs.
Do you put a cap in there for the utilities for the individual?
Chris asked if you put a cap in the lease for utility usage. That's huge. That's super important because utilities can really cut into your bottom line. What we have in our lease, it says we cover average utility use. Anything over that is billed back to the tenant. That's not the exact legal verbiage that we use, but essentially, let's say they get $250 worth of electric and gas.
Thank you.
Anything over that, I send them a bill every month through my property management portal that they cover. That's really, really important to put in your lease.
Thanks, Chris. Any other Q&A questions? What else you want to know about short or medium term? Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
Have you had any issues working with your banker, getting them to understand midterm rentals?
Ooh, financing question. That took a long time.
He asked if my lenders have had any questions or if I've run into any problems with lending for MTRs. No, because like I said, I had plan A, B, and C. The properties that I have purchased that I plan to do MTR with, I knew that they would work as a long-term rental as well, so the bank was okay with that. But I always give them the scenario of, here's how it's going to perform as a long-term, here's how it's going to perform as a midterm, and here's how it's going to perform as a short-term. I do use commercial lenders for all of my properties. I use Midwest Heritage Bank for a lot of them, and then Community First Credit Union. They're both local banks. They give me the best rates, and they're really easy to work with. I can give anyone my contacts if anyone's looking for a lender.
Anything else? Any other questions? Go ahead, Ryan.
So you mentioned through your portal, for your MTRs, I mean, Airbnb probably provides the leasing and stuff like that, but the MTRs, what, are you using a certain system, or is it a different leasing system?
Can you repeat?
What are you using there?
The question was, what are you using for your leasing system or your property management portal? So I've talked about Furnish Finder a lot. That's the website where a lot of my tenant leads come from. There's a portal on there called KeyCheck. You can use that for rent collection and signing leases. I don't. I use my own property management system called Tenant Cloud. I do have to bring all of these tenants on board to my own system where they can pay rent via ACH or credit card. And then I also do all of my leasing through that so they can sign electronically as well. People do book on Airbnb and Airbnb handles that. Some people make them sign a lease in addition to like the Airbnb. I don't. Again, I'm a little bit lazy in that way. I've never had any issues, so I use Tenant Cloud.
Who did you see for your credit union?
Community First Credit Union.
Anything else? Okay, Nathan.
So how else are you marketing to find people for their rental besides the Furnish Finder, calling hospitals, is there any
Marketing for tenants. How do you find the tenants besides Furnish Finder?
Thank you. Yeah, good question. Furnish Finder, Airbnb, so you can set your parameters on Airbnb to only allow 30-day plus stays. I actually have mine set for 90-day minimums because I'm specifically looking for those travel nurses. Free Facebook groups, there's a lot of free Facebook groups out there that are literally just titled like travel nurse housing. Join those, post an evergreen post, your city, rental amount, some nice photos, and any details about the property. I found quite a few leads on Facebook groups, which is free. You don't have to pay for that. Furnish Finder is $99 a year. Airbnb is free to list. It's a 3% fee. And then I also do word of mouth referrals. To all of my current travel nurses, I say, hey, when your contract is up, if you bring me my next tenant, I'll give you a $100 gift card. A lot of people that are working with them might be like staying in a hotel or staying with a friend and might be looking to have their own place. I've probably gotten a handful of just word of mouth referrals also.
Good question. Anything else? Go ahead, Brett.
So I met somebody in Omaha that basically does Airbnb during the summer and then Furnish Finders in the winter. Have you explored that ever, or?
Seasonality of MTR, definitely. In Clear Lake, like I mentioned earlier, it's a summer heavy town. It's super busy, lake life during the summer. In the winter, it's absolutely a dead zone. So I rent my cottage up there to a traveling nurse during the winter. I do actually know investors in Des Moines specifically that rent their units on Airbnb short-term rentals during the summer when it's busy season here, and then they rent to midterm tenants during the winter. Same in Omaha, people do that in Des Moines as well. I don't do that currently because it's more work to manage short-term rentals during the summer, and I like to play golf and pickleball, and I need my summers free. I don't do that, but it's totally a possibility.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm trying to think of a very generic question off the top of my head. Best advice of somebody getting started, or something that you originally thought was a huge hurdle that you were like, wow, that actually wasn't in the end. Or something along those lines.
A hurdle that I originally thought was going to be in my way was money. I think I mentioned that earlier. I will say, if you can have a proof of concept and do 1 or 2 deals on your own first, private money will come to you. I have an Instagram page where I'm sharing my journey. I post about my deals. I share numbers. I'm very authentic and real there and truthful. And I've found hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of private money there from people that say, hey, I see you're doing this thing. I don't have the time, but I want to invest. Can I have you invest my money? If you can show that you're a hard worker and know the ins and outs, money will come to you. Because a lot of people have money but don't have time. I really had the scarcity mindset around money, but there's so many people out there that have money that you would never know have money that would be willing to invest with you.
Cool. Okay, so where?
How does it work if someone wants to invest in you to reinvest?
Good question. She asked if someone wants to invest with me, or hypothetically someone. There's different ways. You can do an equity partnership, which means you would both have equity in the property. I'll give you an example. The 11 unit on the south side is a 60-40 equity split. I own 40%, my partner owns 60%. They came with the $100,000 down payment. I manage the property and do all the day-to-day. They live in California. They have nothing to do with the property. I do everything. There's also just straight up lending. The BRRRRs or flips. Short-term projects are really good for this. It's where someone will say, hey, I have $100,000 to lend you. I'll give it to you at a 10% interest rate. Pay me back in 6 to 12 months. So I'll take that money, I would do a BRRRR or a flip with it. They would get their payment at the end, and then I would hopefully turn around and reuse that money for them again and just keep doing that process over and over.
Cool. Okay, where can folks learn more about what you're doing? Give us a 5-minute update on that.
I'm really active on Instagram. My Instagram is Amelia Joe, R-E-I. Joe, the female version, J-O. I also have a business called Women Invest in Real Estate. So for my women out there, I host retreats around the country. We have a podcast. It's called Women Invest in Real Estate, free Facebook group, etc. I have a course on midterm rentals and a couple freebies on midterm rentals that are on my website, which is just womeninvestinrealestate.com. Yeah. I've been on Bigger Pockets YouTube channel probably 15 to 20 times. I've done a couple mini-series, so if you search my name on their YouTube channel, you'll find me. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, by all means, now mingle, network, and talk amongst yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.